Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. Okay, so at this point, you've probably heard all about red light therapy, haven't you? Maybe you've heard that near-infrared and red light therapy can help you with inflammation, collagen production, and skin health in general. Or maybe you've heard red light improves recovery, sleep, and even cognition. It can make you think better. Maybe red light therapy can do our taxes too. But if you're wondering how to separate the hype from reality, this is definitely the show for you. As you know, I can be highly skeptical of new tech that promises the moon, but it's also important in this wacky world of health to have an open mind and be willing to experiment. And I have to say, I'm fascinated by light therapy in general. As you know, we had a very challenging past 6 months and year when my wife, Allison, and I were actually poisoned by carbon monoxide at a rental. And it was the hardest thing we've ever gone through. I can say that we used every little trick in recovery that we've discovered along our travels, and red light therapy was a critical part of our recovery. So we went to mineral baths all around the Rocky Mountains. We've done red light therapy, different color light therapies, and different types of red light therapy devices in all different forms from, I think my cheapest that I've tried using near infrared and red light therapy was a bulb that was 30 or 40 bucks. And since, we have been doing this video and audio production stuff for about a decade now, I just so happen to have a good place to plug it into, and several options actually. And then the next step up from that, you can kind of get these little heating infrared devices, and then you can get these panels, and then you can get these giant devices that cost many thousands of dollars. So if you're at all curious about how to make sense of this light therapy world, you're in the right place. And on today's episode, we're here with Scott Nelson. You're going to learn why Olympic and pro athletes are experimenting with this crazy red light therapy. You're going to learn the difference between saunas and steam rooms and this kind of therapy, and also the link between light therapy and improved cognitive function. Before we get to the show, though, here's a quick review for the podcast that came in on Stitcher from Emily. She says, I've been listening to Abel's podcast for years and love his practical advice and topical discussions with health and wellness experts. Instead of telling you what to do, Abel is on the health and wellness journey with you, sharing his day-to-day realities and struggles along the way. Plus, he gives perspective on extreme health trends like keto and goes beyond health and wellness to dive into topics like how to be productive and accomplish your creative goals. All in all, he's someone you feel you can instantly trust and relate to. Emily, thank you so much for this sincere review. What you said here, Emily, is interesting. He gives perspective on extreme health trends like keto. So keto, as we all know, is taking over the world and everyone's into it and supporting it and all of that. But as we all know at this point, there is no silver bullet. There is no perfect way of eating forever. This is always going to be a moving target. So it's important that we all keep this in perspective. And I think because there are a lot of people who aren't quite like me out there in the world of health, especially in the podcasting world, just kind of like giving their advice or offering their expertise and everything in between. It's really important to try to bring the pendulum back to the other side from time to time. So I need your help to do that. I need you to not buy keto products that have sugar in them, making them not keto, for example, right? People can abuse all of these words, and that's usually what happens with any trend that may have good intentions or even good therapies behind it. All trends will eventually be abused in this crazy world we live in. Also, it is very important, Emily, as you bring up, to work on your creative goals, because as you get your health, you realize that health is freedom. But even more specifically and accurately, I think when your health is taken away, you realize that your freedom is gone. So once you have that freedom of your health and you're feeling energetic and you're feeling good again, you shed that excess weight and all the rest of it, all of a sudden you do have this excess energy, and the question becomes, what do you do with it? And I know a lot of healers who listen to this, doctors, nurses, chiropractors, and so many other people like that, but many, many creatives and people who are out there in the film and entertainment industries and music industries also listen to this show. And I think it's really important that we try to integrate and share our knowledge, because it's not about being just healthy or having a six-pack or any of these superficial results. It's about being a whole person who's balanced and living a spiritually enriched and fulfilling life. I think that's the ultimate goal. And as you folks listen to this show, I think you kind of realize that sometimes we got to go deep to talk about these things. So anyway, Emily, I really appreciate you writing in. And if you're out there and you have gotten results, or maybe you're struggling and you have a question, please drop me a line. Now, some quick, exciting news before we get to this episode's interview. My new book, Designer Babies Still Get Scabies, is now an international bestseller in 7 countries and counting. We hit #1 bestseller in hot new release in poetry in the US, and then we hit #1 bestseller in humor in France, Germany, and even Japan. #1 bestseller in poetry in Australia, the UK, and Canada. And so I just wanted to quickly say to all of you out there who have supported this kind of different and off-the-wall project, I really appreciate your support. And to all of the creatives out there, in some ways it's better than ever, but also it's harder than ever. So we need to band together and help support each other. So if you're interested in collaborating, or you're interested in a creative project of any kind, drop me a line. Get in touch. Things have gotten crazy out there, in case you haven't noticed. So if you're looking to boost your immune system during pandemic season, then be sure to visit wildsuperfoods.com. You'll find shelf-stable nutrients that can get you through the worst of apocalypses. These are the same supplements we've been taking daily to optimize our own health, and I hope that you like them as much as we do. And if you'd like a monster discount, make sure you go to wildsuperfoods.com and get the subscribe and save bundle, because then you get a bunch of money off, and you also get free access to our 24/7 international coaching community, the Fat Burning Tribe. So just go to wildsuperfoods.com. Pick out your favorite health boosting goodies. We have a lot more coming that are the most delicious we've ever put out. I don't want to be more specific because I don't exactly know when we're going to be launching, but I'm really excited about it. Stay tuned over at wildsuperfoods.com. Thank you once again for your support, all of your purchases from wildsuperfoods.com, wild30.com, fatburningtribe.com, and fatburningman.com. You help us keep the lights on. We couldn't do this without you. And please, if you'd like to support us, don't forget to share this episode with your friends and family and hit that subscribe button or leave your review. Really appreciate it. All right, on to this show with Scott Nelson. We're chatting about why Olympic athletes and NFL pros are turning to red light therapy, the difference between the sauna and the steam room, the link between light therapy and improved cognitive function, photobiomodulation, and how it helps stimulate cell regeneration, and tons more. Let's go hang out with Scott. All right, folks, Scott Nelson is the co-founder of Joovv, and they were kind enough to send over a device to try before this interview so I could at least experientially know a little bit of what I'm talking about here. But prior to co-founding Joovv, Scott spent his professional career in leadership positions with some of the largest medical device companies in the world. In his spare time, Scott is also the host of MedSider Radio, a top-ranked medical device podcast. Scott, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Abel, nice to be on the show, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, well, and thank you for sending over the device, because prior to that, I had tried infrared therapy and light therapy just a little bit. My mom, who's a holistic nurse practitioner and author, she got really into it, and honestly, it was the first time that I'd really had the full body experience, and after the first time, my wife and I have done it pretty much every day for at least 10 minutes or so. And it's amazing the like physiological change that you feel when you're standing in front of those. Maybe not right away, but after a few minutes, there's a whole lot of stuff that starts happening. So why don't you just kind of, for most of the people who are listening, they might not have tried it as well. So let's just give an overview of what's happening here.
Sure. Yeah, we'll start high level, but certainly can go deeper as the conversation unfolds. But what we're talking about is light therapy. That's how it's often referred to in the public media. But it's actually a subspecialty of medicine. In the world of academia, it's referred to as photobiomodulation, or PBM for short. Some people that have used this type of therapy actually call it LLLT, or low-level laser, low-level light therapy. And so whatever acronym you use, I think the most important point is just to understand that wavelengths of light, specific wavelengths of light, red and then near infrared, have a unique mechanism of action. They impact our biology in a very unique way that helps our cells throughout all of our body produce more ATP energy. And because of that kind of that core mechanism of action, enabling our cells to basically function better, produce more energy, it leads to a whole host of benefits. And they're really wide ranging. Everything from better looking skin through increased collagen production, faster muscle recovery, increased peak athletic performance if you're kind of a fitness enthusiast, body contouring or weight loss, actually, enhanced cognitive function, reduced joint pain and inflammation. It almost begins to sound a little bit like a late night QVC commercial. But the cool thing about light therapy or photobiomodulation is all of those benefits that I just kind of rattled off, all supported by published peer-reviewed clinical literature. In fact, there's over 3,000 published manuscripts in various journals on the science and the benefits of light therapy. So definitely supported by a ton of research, and there's a whole host of benefits that you can experience by using this type of stuff on a daily basis.
So I'm curious, from our body's perspective, what are our bodies thinking when they experience something like this? Is it like, am I standing next to the sun right now, or where did this even come from?
Yeah, you got it. And I think that leads almost to a little bit of a higher level conversation around just the impact that light has on our bodies. And I'm sure most of your listeners have come up to speed maybe on the negative impact that excess blue light can have, especially at night.
Yep.
Yeah, especially at night and during the evenings as the sun sets. Well, blue light, bright blue light or white light, acts as a signal to our circadian rhythm, right? It tells our bodies that our bodies begin to think that it's daytime sun and that we should be awake, when in reality we should be going into more of a parasympathetic state, and beginning to prepare for bed. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality of that conversation is that light and different wavelengths of light just impact our biology in different ways, kind of like macronutrients, right? We all understand that proteins, carbs, and fats, our bodies metabolize those different macronutrients in different ways and at different times of the day. So light it's a very kind of similar analogy in that blue light can be good in terms of resetting our circadian rhythm in the morning, right, with the natural sunrise, but can be negative if we're exposed to it, as the sun sets. It impacts our biology. The same thing with red and near infrared light, which is present in daytime sun all the time. And the harsh truth is that we really don't get enough of that healthy red and infrared light during the day. In fact, there's a pretty well-known stat that Americans now spend 93% of our time indoors, right, away from natural sunlight, right? And I know you're in Colorado, you probably get, maybe outside of the snow front that comes through, in the winter, you get a decent amount of sun, right?
Yeah,
well, that's not the case for most of us, not just in America, but throughout the world. And whether you live in a climate that doesn't get a lot of sun, or whether you just we all have busy jobs where we're inside most of the time. And so that stat, if you think about it, is pretty alarming, and before starting Joovv and getting into kind of the kind of beginning to understand the impact that light has on our health, I was in the same boat, commuting to a corporate job, and I was probably inside away from natural sunlight 95% of the time, and so that's such a drastically different lifestyle than even 150, 200 years ago. And our biological systems just haven't adapted or evolved that fast. And so I think that the bigger story I'm trying to tell is that natural light is really important, especially specific wavelengths of light. And it's just hard to get those healthy wavelengths of light on a consistent basis. And that's kind of where, a light therapy device kind of comes into play. It's similar to like supplementing your diet with a multivitamin or some sort of other supplement.
Yeah.
It's a good way to kind of supplement your light diet. I'm using air quotes for the listeners here. Your light diet, is just by being exposed to these healthy wavelengths of light on a consistent basis.
But at the same time, where a lot of people are coming from is like the whole tanning bed thing. So it's like when man starts fiddling with machine, it's like, are tanning beds good for us? A lot of bodybuilders did it for a while, but it's like, so let's differentiate what we're talking about here, because it's not like all light is the same.
Right, exactly. And that's the important point, I think, to remember, is that all these wavelengths of light, it's best just to view them within the context of like macronutrients. They're not all the same. Our bodies respond to them differently. So like a tanning bed, right? That delivers mostly UV light, and UV light can be, some UV light can be good in terms of helping our bodies produce more vitamin D, right? Our bodies respond to that type of wavelength of light and in turn produce vitamin D. But there's also some downsides to UV light too, especially like excess exposure to UV light, which can cause burning, as all of us know. So our bodies respond to UV light in various ways, right? With the proper amount, UV light can help our bodies produce more vitamin D, right? But with excess UV light, our bodies can burn, our skin can burn, which is a an inflammatory response to an excess amount of that type of light.
Yeah.
Well, with red and near infrared light, which we're talking about, just different kinds of light, kind of like proteins versus carbs, just a different type of light. But there's really no downsides at all to red and near infrared light. It's hard to get too much of it. There's not really any sort of negative ramifications in terms of burning your skin or anything like that. It's really like almost the equivalent of drinking healthy water. It's hard to, you really, really got to overdo it. If you're drinking too much water, the same kind of concept applies to red and near infrared light.
Yeah. So let's go a little deeper. What is happening to the body ATP a little more specifically?
Yeah. So these wavelengths of light that I keep talking about, red and near infrared light, they fall within a very narrow spectrum. So the light spectrum is actually really broad. You've got visible light, you've got infrared light, which I think most of us have probably heard about at some point in our lives. But infrared light specifically is actually really broad. It's anywhere from about 1,000 nanometers to 20,000 nanometers, and that's, so it's like almost like the distance of a football field, so to speak. So it's a really broad range.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about here is near infrared. So it's actually a very, very narrow spectrum within the infrared kind of window, so to speak, and then visible red light. And these two wavelengths of light, red and near infrared light, have a unique ability to help our cells produce more energy. And there's a whole cascade of events that happen during cellular respiration that basically help our cells to function more. One of the core actions that we're kind of talking about is giving our cells the ability to produce more adenosine triphosphate. Because of that, that's in essence our it's like almost like tuning up the engine of a car, right? At the mitochondrial level, the engine of your car, the engine of your cells, your mitochondria are just fine-tuned when exposed to this type of light. They're functioning better. They're functioning more efficiently, et cetera. So that's kind of the core mechanism of action at play. But there's also this cascade that I kind of referred to, where you get enhanced gene transcription. You get a shift in redox state at the cellular level. Those are just kind of two of the byproducts by in essence stimulating the mitochondria of your cells. You get this very healthy downstream reactions, and that's why, because of that core kind of foundational mechanism of action, that's why you get such a wide variety of benefits, because we have cells throughout our entire body, really outside of our blood cells. Our mitochondria exist everywhere in our bodies, and so that's why this concept of delivering these healthy wavelengths of light to your entire body, not just through a targeted device, is actually really beneficial for overall health.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed wasn't just kind of like a subtle well-being, which was one of the things. It was it was one of my first like runs after the ice melted on the roads, and it's hilly here, and I went for like 5 or 6 miles, and my calves were screaming. It's like when you're getting kind of like back into shape and doing rough stuff like that, you can pay for it sometimes. And so I was paying for it a little bit and kind of expecting to, but I think I did maybe 10 or 20 minutes, and it was almost instantaneously better. Like the aching went away, the tightness, everything just seemed like it loosened up a little bit. And then by the next morning, I was really surprised. I was expecting to be super sore, but I wasn't. I was still somewhat sore. It didn't cure everything, but I was really shocked by the difference when used for recovery.
Yeah, that's probably one of the areas, like muscle recovery, and then maybe like acute joint pain, where people seem to respond the fastest. So if you're dealing with like a sore elbow, right, or a sore knee that maybe you tweaked, or if you're a fitness enthusiast or even a professional athlete, that you know how your body's supposed to respond after that type of workout, and you're like, okay, wow, that I'm sore, but not nearly as sore as I am usually. And those are probably the two areas that we see customers respond to the fast. Even kind of on that note with professional athletes, we do have a lot of different pro athletes using our full body devices now. And it's that very thing. It's they notice exactly, they're so in tune with their bodies, right, and how they typically respond after a certain type of training, and by exposing their entire body to these healthy wavelengths of light, red and near infrared, their muscles just recover that much faster. So it's those two areas, and then sleep. Sleep is another big category that a lot of people report back pretty instantaneous benefits, by using this type of therapy on a consistent basis. And most of those people are, they're wearing Oura rings, or they're using like the Whiting's, sleep pad device, or even like the Whoop band, and they can see like, yes, I mean, my REM and my deep sleep are better when I use this type of therapy, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day.
It's really funny because like you could probably imagine I'm sent stuff all the time. And there's just so many things to try in the world of health and fitness. And it is so rare that I actually find something where it's like, wow, this works. This seems to work. That's amazing. Yeah. But that must be a really exciting thing to kind of have and share with all these athletes and other people for the first time, because I would imagine, these athletes they've tried way more stuff than I have. So what is their response usually? Can you share any stories about that?
Well, the first response is usually pretty cynical, right? I mean, they're like, right. They're introduced to it from maybe like their trainer or someone else kind of in their network. And they're like, what? I stand in front of this light and I'm supposed to get better or like recover faster. That seems bogus. And that to me is very understandable, because I've spent my entire career in like traditional, like Western med tech, right? Like with arterial stents and balloons and atherectomy catheters, like, quote unquote, real kind of medical stuff. And so when I was first introduced to this type of therapy, I was super skeptical. But if you do just a little bit of research, right, on, even if it's something just on like PubMed, there's loads and loads of studies that support this type of therapy. And then if you just give it a try on a consistent basis, you'll there's no doubt you'll begin to notice benefits, whether it's if it's like in the kind of the fitness arena with faster muscle recovery, whether it's just with tracking sleep, benefits like better skin health, to the increased collagen production. Those benefits tend to be, take a little bit longer to see. Some of that's because we look at ourselves in the mirror every day, so it's just harder to notice those subtle benefits. But that is kind of there's like two kind of there's kind of two different reactions that we often see as like first skepticism. Then most people will give it a shot, and they're like, wow, this feels better. It feels like I notice it feels very soothing, right? Whether they do it in the morning or evening. And then after consistent usage, it's like I'm sold. Like this is part of my daily routine, because anyone can fit something in for 10 minutes a day. And so that's kind of the typical kind of path that most people follow, and it's very similar to the path that I kind of followed when first being introduced to light therapy. Yeah,
and when was that? How long has this been used as a therapy?
Yeah, so it's been low-level light therapy or low-level laser therapy or photobiomodulation. It's actually been studied for quite some time. In the late 20th century, so like 1950s and beyond, most of the time you had to deliver these type of wavelengths of light through a laser, just because that was really the only type of equipment that you could deliver precise wavelength of light at the right power to produce a clinically relevant dose of energy. Well, then you fast forward to the 1990s, and that's when NASA began to invest or fund some research with the use of LEDs. Specifically, they were specifically researching, of course, like how can this positively impact our astronauts in space?
Yeah.
And so since then, and they begin to see like really positive results with the use of LEDs. That's when sort of this space has really begun to expand, because LEDs, you can deliver very precise wavelengths of light through LEDs. They're a lot less expensive to manufacture versus a laser. And then you can begin to introduce these wavelengths of light over a much broader treatment area. So instead of being limited to just like a small little targeted area of your body, you can now deliver these healthy wavelengths of light across a really broad surface area. And so kind of if you fast forward into the early 2000s to date, especially over the last probably 5 years, there's a ton of published research, and it's only continuing. Most of it kind of does follow into we're like ourselves included, Joovv as a company, in partnership with other academic researchers, are beginning to really invest in other sort of therapeutic arenas and whether or not light therapy has an impact. So things like gut health, hormone-related categories, testosterone and estrogen-related areas. So it's kind of like this cool thing that's been proven time and time again for like these core benefit areas like muscle recovery and joint pain relief, inflammation, et cetera. But it's going to be fun to like really begin to expand upon that and study the impact that these types of wavelengths of light have in other really important aspects of health too.
Yeah, and that's just another thing, I guess, like to help explain it a little more or better. It's not just light that lands on your skin and it stops, right? There's a lot more going through your body and penetrating. So can we talk about that a little bit? Like, do you have to shine it on all your skin and swirl around in circles, or how does that work?
Yeah, the key to this is just making sure that your skin is exposed to this type of light. I mean, if you're wearing a shirt or any type of clothing, that is going to block this type of light. So you definitely want skin exposure. But I think you bring up a really good point, because we talked a little bit about like the changes from laser-based devices to LED-based devices, and with the kind of the as technology has evolved in the LED space, if you're using the right chipsets and using the right drivers, you can actually deliver a lot of power through LEDs. And what that allows you to do is push that light deeper into the body. So with red light, most of that energy is absorbed in the superficial layers of your skin, the dermis and epidermis of your skin. It's great for skin health and other really superficial tissues. But near-infrared light, combined with the right power, actually has a unique ability to penetrate pretty deep into our bodies. In fact, it can penetrate through bone. The energy does dissipate as it travels through bone, of course, and that's why it's important to use like a pretty high-powered device. But when you look at the published literature with respect to joint pain relief, inflammation relief, cognitive function, reduced symptoms from brain injuries like TBI, as an example, most of the time it's near-infrared light that's being used with high power. And that just showcases the unique ability for near-infrared light to penetrate deep into our body. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is there is a difference between red and near-infrared light. Very similar mechanism of action at the cellular level, but the biggest difference between the two is depth of penetration. Red light is absorbed more readily in your superficial tissues, whereas near-infrared light can penetrate deeper into your bodies. And
so like when people talk about light therapy, a lot of times historically they would just be talking about one of those at a time, right? Correct.
And like as an example, this type of therapy has been used for quite some time in the traditional skincare world with estheticians and in med spas, and they'll actually refer to it as LED therapy, ironically enough. And most of the time it's just red light. It's very it's great for skin health, right?
Yeah.
Which estheticians and med spas are kind of concerned with. But near infrared light is that's where like when you look at published clinical literature, it's oftentimes near infrared light is used more routinely, just because it has a much broader impact because of its ability to penetrate deeper. And that's and most people that are probably listening to this, like we discussed earlier, are familiar with infrared light within the context of a spa, but that's even different, right? That's not the same as near infrared light. A good dry sauna or infrared sauna is oftentimes delivering mid and far infrared, and kind of going back to our original conversation around our bodies respond to these different wavelengths of light. Well, mid and far infrared, those wavelengths of light have a unique ability to heat up our body tissues, right? Which is why they're great for a sauna, because a sauna, that's the whole goal, right? Is to induce heat stress. And so mid and far infrared wavelengths of light are great for that. But when we're talking about light therapy and helping your cells produce more energy, that's where red and really more specifically near infrared light is most beneficial.
What are some other misconceptions that a lot of people are coming with?
Yeah, one of the most common questions is especially as people are kind of either evaluating the therapy or first using it, is like, is it safe to look at?
Yeah.
And because especially if the device incorporates bright red light at a high intensity, it's very bright, as you could probably attest to. You're like, you first turn on a high quality light therapy device, it's like, whoa, that's super bright. Is it safe to look at? Which is a natural question. But depending on the device, I mean, I can speak to ours. We had, as part of like kind of the FDA registration process, there's a whole host of tests that you have to do. And one of those is photobiological safety testing for your eyes. And so that's one of the reasons, like with our devices, we don't include eyewear, because it's not required. These devices are completely safe to look at. But having said that, or I should say, like, in addition to that, these wavelengths of light are actually very healthy for your eyes. There's a lot of peer-reviewed published literatures that suggest that they not only help with disease states like macular degeneration, but even just acute enhancements with vision, just overall vision. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. Like our eyeballs, our retinas, they have cells too. And by helping the cells in your retina function better, or function at a higher, with more efficiency, it would make sense that you'd see the same type of improvements when it comes to vision and eye health as well. So that's one of the questions that we often get, is like, it's not safe to look at. I've got to wear glasses of some type, but the reality is it's actually very, very healthy for vision.
Well, yeah, one thing I noticed was exactly what you described. Like when we first fired the thing up, it was like, and I'm like, am I in a microwave right now? But after doing it for a few weeks now, it's like not bright when I look at it. Does that make sense? It's like the brightness is not freaky. It's not startling. It's actually more relaxing. It's like my body connected the dots, or became less sensitive.
I think that's almost like a good way to put it too, is your body almost begins to respond and connect the dots. Mm-hmm. That sounds maybe a little bit kind of vague, but like I have it's the same experience with me. Like anymore, when I even first turn it on, it's not, I mean, it's bright, but it's not nearly as like bright as when you turn it on for the first time. So what we typically encourage people to do is just close, if it's super bright, just close your eyes for the first, part of the treatment, and the rods and cones in your eyes begin to shift, and kind of interact with that light. So it becomes sort of easier to sort of get used to, and you do kind of become accustomed to it over time, as you've experienced. So yeah, it's actually very healthy for eyes, and this is an interesting kind of side story, but one of sort of the pioneers in kind of sort of heliotherapy or light therapy was a gentleman. His name is completely escaping me right now, but he's really well known. It's John Ott. John Ott is his name. He's really well known for his work in time-lapsed photography, and he became sort of aware of light therapy by using time-lapse photography in a schoolroom with kids that are exposed to like bright white light all day long, and seeing how like they become more fatigued over the course of a day. And then he began to just implement more natural sunlight into his like kind of his daily routine, his weekly routine. And he noticed significant improvements with chronic pain, chronic joint pain that he always suffered with. And one of the biggest changes he made is when he'd go to the beach or get exposed to natural sunlight, he'd take off his sunglasses and begin to just receive like full spectrum sunlight just through his eyes. And that's when he began to notice some really, really profound changes. And so that's just sort of an anecdotal story. But, if you're more of like a science nerd and want to get into the science, like there's a fair amount of data that does definitely showcase that these wavelengths of light can be very healthy for vision.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it does something too when the light goes off and then your eyes, I don't know how to describe that effect. Do you, when your entire perception of color has shifted to the other side?
Yeah, a lot of people will respond. It's funny when we'll do like a conference or some sort of event, and people are using this for the first time. They're like, "What? Did the color change? Is it now? Are you now shining green light at me now?" It's
right.
Like, no, it's the same. It's the same thing. It's just the rods and cones in your eyes begin to adjust as the therapy's on, and then they begin to kind of adjust once it's off as well. But no, that's kind of a very healthy kind of thing. It's just it's very natural. But I think the important point here is that it's really beneficial to just, for your eyes to just be exposed to these types of healthy wavelengths. It's a lot easier with near infrared light because near infrared is invisible to the to the human eye. So it's a lot easier just to kind of, use near infrared light. In fact, my wife will often, when we're in bed, she'll often shine, one of our little handheld devices just on her forehead, and it doesn't illuminate the room. And there's a fair amount of evidence that showcases near infrared light can kind of help shift sort of that sympathetic state and help relax your body, as you prep for bedtime. So yeah, but anyway, kind of circling back to your question, Abel. Yeah, that's one of the most common questions that we get is like, is this super bright? Is it safe to look at? But yeah, the answer with our devices is yes, it's completely fine.
And one thing that I really like about it, even though it is, exogenous, obviously it's outside of the body, is how non-invasive it is compared to so many other things that people try to achieve, even just fractions of the same result, whether it be, recovery or anti-inflammatory benefits or whatever. People are taking all sorts of drugs, trying all sorts of things, whereas you can use light to actually change your outcomes. It's fascinating.
It is. It sounds so funny, and that's one of the other common questions. As simple as it is like, do I really just shine this on myself for 10 minutes? That's it. And it's like, well, yeah, as simple as that is, that's really what it comes down to. Is get pretty close to the device and let it shine on your body for about 10 minutes. But it's just amazing, and I think that just kind of that the simplicity of this, the non-invasive, to your point, and the nature of light therapy and the simplicity of it causes people to kind of like question it. Does it work? It like, this seems kind of silly, and it kind of goes back to our original our earlier discussion around skepticism. But the cool thing is like, this is like, in my career, kind of in traditional like med tech, and this kind of, I guess, falls into that umbrella a little bit. I've never seen a therapy that's supported by this amount of clinical research. So there's kind of a certain aspect that you kind of have to believe in the science. But if you do give it a shot and start to using it on a consistent basis, I'm not going to guarantee anything per se, but I think there's probably a strong chance that you'll see some pretty noticeable benefits with consistent use.
But it's not like one of those health things that's been underground for a long time, and all these companies have been just rallying against it and all that. It's more just like, it seems to me at least, a meeting of technology and kind of the right timing for people to be ready for it. Does that sound right?
Yeah, totally. It's been, it's a lot of the research does date back to kind of the mid 20th century. And in fact, if you even go back like further than that, it was fairly commonplace in like the it'd be like the late 19th century, early 20th century for like even hospitals to kind of wheel patients out into the natural sunlight. And they did that for the purposes of heliotherapy. In fact, we're even starting to see a trend within like even hospitals to date that are beginning to incorporate more healthy, different types of light inside a hospital, other than like bright white, bright blue light, right? I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, why has this taken so long to get to this point? But I think it's just kind of beginning to understand that light plays an important role in our health, and it really shouldn't be underappreciated. Ideally, everyone can spend just more time in natural sunlight, like I am right now. But that's just it's hard to do. It's kind of like making the comparison or drawing the parallel that it's easy for everyone just to adopt a paleo kind of diet or an ancestral type of diet. Well, yeah, that's a great first step, but like some people need to kind of, get there, baby steps to get there. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people just can't, go spend 30 minutes a day in natural sunlight. They just don't have the type of lifestyle that affords it. And that's why, kind of supplementing your lifestyle with healthy wavelengths of light, is kind of an important point that most people just kind of underappreciate.
What about, is there like a threshold that you pass? Because I'm trying to figure out, like, we have a small light that we've had for a little while, but it's like this big, right? And I know you have some smaller units. You sent us one of the larger ones. You've got like a giant 6-1.
Yeah.
So how does that all work with the body?
Yep. That's another common question that comes up is like, how long do I use it? Like at what distance? And this can get really complicated. In essence, it's a physics related conversation. But I think the important point to note is that coverage and power are probably two critical factors to any type of light therapy device. And what I mean by, we'll start with the first one, coverage. Like the size of the device is basically the treatment area. You can, and what I mean by that is for those listening, you're not going to maybe get this analogy the best, but I'm holding an iPhone in front of me right now. If I hold the iPhone at 2 feet away from my hand, right? My hand is still being illuminated by the light. There's no doubt, right? But the energy dose that actually reaches my hand is so low that you'd really have to use a light therapy device for a really long period of time for my hand, in that example, to receive any sort of like clinically relevant dose of energy.
Right.
And so distance and kind of distance and coverage area are really important. And like really the reality is that standing at really anything beyond about 12 inches from a light therapy device, the dosage that actually reaches your body drops off dramatically. And so I think the moral of the story here is like you got to be pretty close to a light therapy device to receive a clinically relevant dose of energy in a short amount of time. There's we've seen some various images online where someone's standing, they've got a light therapy device and they're standing 3 or 4 feet away and they're thinking, oh, it's covering my whole body. Well, I mean, maybe it looks to be that way, but like the energy that's actually reaching your body is so drastically low that there's no really therapeutic effect at all that's happening. And so that's what I mean. Like the size of the device is almost like a direct 1-to-1 correlation between the size of the device and the area of your body that it actually is treating. Yeah. If that makes sense. Yeah. So that's why like the full body device that you have, it's literally like head to toe, right? It's like it's 6 feet tall and about 2 feet wide or so, something like that. And that's basically about the treatment area is the size of the device. And then kind of the second part of that story, and they're somewhat interrelated, is power. And the power that's delivered from the device. So we're not talking about watts that the device consumes, right? Everyone's used to shopping for a light bulb at a home improvement store, and you see 60 watts or whatever. So we're not talking about the wattage or the power that the device consumes. We're actually talking about the power that's delivered from the device that actually reaches your body. And so that's kind of hard to explain in a conversation like that. But maybe we'll provide a link to kind of for people that want to learn more about this topic in the show notes. But what I'm trying to say is you want a light therapy device that delivers a pretty solid amount of power, and you need to be pretty close to the device to receive a clinically relevant dose of energy. And that's why when it comes to our product specifically, we generally recommend about 3 to 6 inches or so from the device for about 10 minutes. And based on kind of our dosage calculations, that's a pretty good amount of energy for most people, for general kind of overall wellness. Now, if you're trying to treat something specific, like a sore joints, or if you're like a high performance athlete and you want to like treat your muscles, that's a little bit different where you can, you could go a little bit longer, instead of 10 minutes, maybe go 15 minutes. And instead of going for a lot longer, 30, 45 minutes, you actually probably want to do just multiple sessions per day, instead of going for one long period of time. And I think that's sort of more in line, almost like with giving your cells a little bit of a rest, because there's only so much energy that they can take in a given period of time. And if you go longer, it's not necessarily that there's gonna be negative downstream ramifications. It's just more like a law of diminishing returns. So basically, if you're using one of our devices at the recommended treatment distance of about 3 to 6 inches, after about 20 minutes in that specific treatment area, there's really not a lot of additive benefits beyond that. It's better just to kind of stop and then maybe do it, give yourself a couple hours and then do it again a little bit later in the day. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so you're out in the sun right now too. So how do you balance light therapy with like just natural light that's out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's the first step that we recommend for anyone. If you're new to this topic of like how light impacts your health, and that it's actually pretty relevant, to optimize your health, whether you're trying to treat something specifically or just trying to fine tune your body. The first step we recommend is just try to get more natural sunlight on a daily basis. Go outside for 15, 20 minutes. You don't have to take off your clothes. Just get more natural sunlight on a daily basis. That's step number one. But, I would argue that if you're getting like an hour of natural sunlight and you're in a decent latitude, right? If you're in a northern climate, it may be a little bit different. But like I'm in Southern California, if I'm out in the sun and most of my body is exposed for about an hour, I'm getting probably close to 1 million joules of energy, believe it or not, in that hour. That's a lot of energy. That's enough light. That's enough light for most people to kind of really, really begin to see a lot of benefits. But most people aren't going to spend an hour, myself included, most people aren't going to spend an hour in the sun. I just don't.
Right.
I personally don't have the schedule that affords that.
Especially with skin exposure, right? It's not really appropriate to strip down at work and be like, sun time, guys.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like if you're not used to that, like excess UV light exposure can have, can be sort of damaging. Yeah, and then to your point, like, I mean, I've got neighbors. I think most people that are listening to this discussion have neighbors. Like, they're probably not going to like think that's too cool for you to kind of strip down and get full spectrum sunlight during the day. And so that's why, like, for me personally, if I go to the to the beach on a Saturday with the kids and I get like some nice sun exposure, I probably don't need to do light therapy that day. But every other day where I'm not like outside for a prolonged period of time, it's just a good healthy thing to do. And for 10 minutes of the day. So like me, one of our larger full body systems on top of a vibration plate, and I just do some breath work for 10 minutes. It's a really nice kind of way to kind of reset sort of my body for the day. And then I'm also, getting a ton of healthy light, not too dissimilar to like taking a nice high quality like multivitamin or something like that. It's kind of a very similar concept. So that's probably the best way I would think about kind of that topic of like natural sunlight versus supplementing kind of your lifestyle with a light therapy device is it's if you're super healthy and you're eating like a really like high quality ancestral kind of paleo diet, theoretically you probably don't need a supplement, right? Maybe. But if you're not able to do that all the time, you may need to supplement your diet with a multivitamin. So kind of very similar sort of analogy when it comes to light.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't believe it. This has gone by so fast. We're almost out of time. But before we go, could you please tell folks what you're working on and also a little bit more about where to find you guys? Yeah.
So the best place to find us is Joovv.com. So it's J, 2 O's and 2 V's. So it's short for rejuvenate. So just Joovv.com. If you Google like red light therapy or Joovv light therapy, you'll find us as well. But that's probably the best place to start. And I would recommend going to two places on our site. One is if you're a science nerd like myself, go to the Learn page. There's a whole host of really well-sourced long-form articles on various topics when it comes to light therapy. So everything from muscle recovery to joint pain, inflammation, whatever. Tons of articles there. If you want to stay high level and just kind of get an idea of like what people are saying about our devices, we post all of the reviews to our reviews page. It's pretty easy to find on our website, and you can see what people have to say in their own words. So those are probably the two areas that I direct people to that are interested in kind of learning a little bit more about light therapy. And if you're on social, we're at Joovv Social on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So if you just do a search for red light therapy or Joovv, you'll find us there as well.
Awesome. Well, Scott, this is fascinating stuff. It seems so promising. You must be psyched.
Yeah, no, it's fun to be part of something that's supported by so much science, and it's kind of cool to like introduce people to the impact of that light has on our health, for the first time. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's fun to be a part of it.
Right on. Well, thanks so much, Scott. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Abel. Enjoyed the conversation.
This episode is brought to you by listeners like you and Future Greens. Let me ask you this. How many servings of veggies have you had so far today? How about this week? Like it or not, recent studies show that 9 out of 10 of us do not eat the recommended amount of daily fruits and veggies. Now, if you're one of those uncompromising health nuts who gets more than 10 servings of veggies a day, you can ignore what I'm about to say. Now, for the rest of you, listen up. If you're looking to improve your health and increase the amount of nutrition in your diet with fruits and veggies without the sugar, you're going to love our new creation called Future Greens. Future Greens is packed with vitamins, minerals, and filling fiber from whole organic veggies, sprouts, algae, and berries, including kale, beet, parsley, collard greens, cauliflower sprouts, broccoli sprouts, spirulina, chlorella, blueberries, raspberries, and much more. We think it tastes great, and we even heard that some kids think that Future Greens taste pretty good too. All of our products at Wild Superfoods are lab tested for purity and potency and formulated according to the latest cutting-edge developments in research, science, and medicine. We have extremely high standards when it comes to our health, and we know you do too. Guaranteed nutrition, no matter where you are. That's our promise to you. So check out Wild Superfoods and please get in touch to tell us what you think. Just head over to wildsuperfoods.com to get the scoop on Future Greens, and you can save 20% when you select subscribe and save. All you have to do is visit wildsuperfoods.com to get the deal. Thanks for listening. Well, hey there, listener. This is Abel one more time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Fat Burning Man Show. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you might be listening to or watching this show right now. And if you have a second, please leave me a quick review for the Fat Burning Man Show. I read every single one of them, and every time you leave a review, it gives us a little boost in the rankings, and that helps other people find this show. And if you can think of someone else who might enjoy and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or a family member. And if they're like, what is this Fat Burning Man thing? That's a really silly name. You could be like, you're right, but here's the deal. We've recorded over 250 episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show with thought leaders in health from all over the world. And so far, we've won 4 awards, hitting #1 in health in more than 8 countries internationally. We have more than 30 million downloads already, but we're just getting started. I can't believe any of this, by the way, and couldn't do any of this without you, so thanks once again. But here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode of the Fat Burning Man Show for free with 0 outside advertisements, no outside sponsors, and no corporate overlords. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. I'll give you a second here just to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes, transcripts, and video and audio versions for all the past episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show for free. Better yet, enter your email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide so you can take your health into your own hands right now, along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free goodies with a bonus surprise straight to your inbox. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening once again, and have a great week.